Hello, fellow RoboCapitalists. Hope you're well. So, unfortunately, we've got some bad news. The World Economic Forum has basically just taken over NATO. How? You may be asking. Well, let's get right over to CNBC and check out what is happening with the PM, the Prime Minister. The Dutch Prime Minister, Mark, I believe his last name is Rutte. I've been following this guy ever since the cerveza sickness. And if you guys remember, this guy was just authoritarian central. He was one of the cheerleaders for medicine, not just medicine mandates, but medicine passports. And I'll give you a quick reminder here in just a moment. But this guy is basically a proxy for Klaus Schwab. That's really what's going on here. I know, I think he might even be part of the quote unquote conservative party over in the Netherlands, but look at his policies, look at his agenda, and it's just basically whatever the World Economic Forum says, right? Obviously, he's great buddies with Klaus Schwab, but what's really interesting is not just the fact that he is the new Secretary General of NATO, but also, maybe even more interesting, is what happened last year. Let's rewind a little bit. So this was July of 2023. Dutch PM Mark Rutte, or Rutte, says he won't run for fifth term as government collapses. And that might have been a little bit of a oversell there. I don't know that it collapsed. But when was the last time you saw basically a career politician? I think he might have started off his career at Unilever in the private sector. But for the last decade or two, a politician, when was the last time you saw them just quit? Not only that, the guy's quitting at 56 years old. Weird, huh? That he quit last year. So key talking points here. This guy became the country's longest serving prime minister in history in August last year. Said he plans to leave Dutch politics following elections later in the year. Weird, isn't it? Very, very unusual to say the least. So this guy has been the leader of the quote-unquote conservative party for, ironically, freedom and democracy. For freedom and democracy. Freedom and democracy, but you better well have that medicine passport or else you're not getting into this restaurant. He takes it a step further. Wait till we get into some of these other articles that go through his history during the cerveza sickness. For the leader of the Freedom Party. Said yesterday morning I made the decision that I will not again be available as leader of the VVD. Once the new cabinet is formed after the elections, I will leave politics. And do what? And now all of a sudden, he is not just NATO's Secretary General, but he achieved this position because his rival simply withdrew from the race. Remember back in 2020, we had a way of determining and being right almost every single time when it came to the cerveza sickness. How did we do that? It was just the simple sniff test. Does it pass the sniff test? This doesn't. I can assure you of that. So I'll let you come to your own conclusions, but I don't see how this wasn't set up and this wasn't planned going all the way back to probably 2022 when Putin invaded Ukraine and the global elite look at this as a fantastic opportunity to start World War III. Now you say, George, come on, this is ridiculous. Why would they want to do that? I mean, at the end of the day, they've got to live on this planet as well. Right. But what you forget is the global elite today, the World Economic Forum, the EU, the UN, etc. They are, in essence, a Malthusian cult. And Malthusians believe that there are way too many people on the planet and not enough resources. And therefore, you've got to take direct and indirect action in order to reduce the population. You can call that anti-human, whatever you want. So anything that is anti-human, whether it's climate change, whether it's reducing the amount of energy we use, whether it's reducing the amount of food that we have available to us by attacking the farmers. This all fits right into the sweet spot for the Malthusians. They see this as just a perfect way to decrease the population moving forward. So therefore, the people that still exist on Earth have a better life. That's exactly their worldview. And we're going to get into a clip from, and I go over this quite often, but I've never seen a clip or a movie summarize the Malthusian position that is held as a religion by today's global elite better than the Avengers movie with Thanos. I forgot which one it was, but we're going to touch on that in just a moment. Let's keep going here, because if you don't remember exactly who this clown is, basically a stooge for Klaus Schwab, he's a fill-in. He's just a fill-in. He's a proxy for Klaus Schwab. Let's go back. And by the way, if you looked at the thumbnail, if you saw that, how creepy is this picture? Look at that. Like, who does this, first and foremost? Like, who stands in front of a massive, giant picture of themselves? It really, when I saw this picture, it reminded me of all those statues that the megalomaniacs throughout history always create of themselves, right? The Stalins, the Kim Jong-un, the Saddam Hussein, right? They always create these massive, bigger than life statues. And because they are sociopaths and they basically see themselves as gods that are living here on Earth. Look at what this is. And if you say, oh, George, well, he's just standing up on stage and they just have a crowd of 500 people, but they want to make him look like some sort of deity, right? Well, I would ask you, if you think this is normal, how about me going to Rebel Capitalist Live? That's the conference that I do once a year. It's all about the Rebel Capitalist community, but it's a result of George Gammon's channel and George Gammon's presence on YouTube. How just creepy would it be if right up there on stage, instead of having the Rebel Capitalist logo, there was just my face, a giant image of George Gammon just staring down at the crowd at all times. Now that gives you a little bit of perspective as to how just beyond creepy this is, as he's winning an award, being congratulated by none other than Klaus Schwab. So getting back to, and here, oh yeah, that's a more, I guess, a higher resolution picture. You can see his eye like right in the back, just like he's got this look on his face where he's not even smiling. He just wants you to acknowledge his excellence. He just wants all the plebs in the audience to understand the power he has. I mean, people that see this as normal or want this type of attention are just sociopaths. I mean, plain and simple. And look at all the plebs out there. Look at all the sheep that we control, Klaus. Isn't this amazing? It's going to even better. It's going to be even better when I'm in charge of NATO. I can do everything in my power to initiate World War III to cut the population of the Earth in half. And let's not forget that they're not only Malthusians, but they're Marxists. And they're not only Marxists and Malthusians, but they're also eugenicists. So a lot of people push back and say, George, why would they want to do this? Because they could be, if they want depopulation, well, that could mean that this is applicable to their family. No. They want to depopulate, but they just want to depopulate the brown people. They just want to depopulate the poor people. They just want to depopulate the Africans. You see, I mean, if you really get into the nitty gritty as to what they are all about, you go back to the Club of Rome as an example in the 1960s. And then you look at the ideas espoused by the World Economic Forum, not just today, but going all the way back to when they started in the beginning of the 1970s. This all becomes crystal clear. This is not tinfoil hatter stuff. This is not conspiracy theory. This is just calling a spade a spade. But now let's get into some of his policies. Here we go. Remember the Dutch farmers? Who do you think was right at the top of that, trying to force them to change the way they have farmed for generations due to what? Or in the name of climate change. Sound like something the World Economic Forum would push? Yeah, I think so. Because right there with him was Ursula, who at the time was in charge of the EU. So you've got Ursula and Rutte here that are just pawns for the global elite, whoever they are. We'll just use Klaus Schwab as an example. And they're sitting there forcing the Dutch farmers in this case to practice methods that would massively decrease the amount of food available, and therefore who would suffer? Do you think Ursula would suffer? No, she's got plenty of money to afford food at a higher price. The people that suffer and therefore quite literally die are the poor people. And at the end of the day, that's what this is all about. It's not just about killing people. It's about killing poor people and killing brown people that they don't like. And then the media spins it. I love this too. I was reading part of this article, and they never really mention why the farmers were protesting. They're just like, oh, these farmers, they're kind of just a little bit mad, and we don't really know why, but they're just kind of under a lot of stress. And then you see here that Ursula is, and I forgot where it was in the article here, but she says that we're facing all of these challenges. Here we go. We must work together to achieve nature goals and combat climate change. Well, how are you working to combat climate change? Well, she would say after a few drinks, well, I'm trying to reduce the population of the earth. Let's get over to his record during the cerveza sickness. So not only was he for medicine mandates, not only was he for medicine passports, but check this out. So I'm going to read part of this here. This goes all the way back to September 25th, 2021. Hundreds of protesters marched against the introduction of the Corona Pass in the Netherlands on Saturday. As proof of cerveza sickness, vax became compulsory to get into bars, restaurants, theaters, and other venues. Hours after requirement to show the pass or recent negative test took effect, the government of caretaker Prime Minister Mark Rutte fired a cabinet minister who had publicly questioned the measure. So you publicly question. You just say, wow, I wonder if this is a good idea. I wonder if this infringes on people's privacy, on their personal liberty, on their God-given freedoms. Oh, we'll have none of that here, my friend. You are fired because I'm all in favor of freedom. Look, my party, it says it. It says Freedom Party. And that type of freedom I don't like. We're only about the freedom that I approve of. And I don't approve of anyone questioning me restricting freedom. That's the guy that now is in charge of NATO. But unfortunately, it gets worse. Because if you're kind of saying, oh, George, I don't know if he has, that many ties. And the guy seems like an honest chap. Look at him. He's well-dressed, has a nice haircut, smiles all the time. All these other things that you're talking about, him not wanting to pursue politics anymore, just out of the blue. And then all of a sudden being named NATO Secretary General when the guy that was his rival just mysteriously quits for no real reason. If you need any more proof, here we go. Dutch Prime Minister caught lying about connections to Klaus Schwab. So this kid, I forgot what his name is, but he brought up the fact in one of their, I believe, parliament meetings. I'll just read it here. The naturalness with which Dutch PM Mark Rutte lies is fascinating as it is as fascinating as it is dangerous. When Gideon von Majeren asks him for his opinion on the controversial globalist manifesto called the Cerveza Sickness, the Great Reset, he pretends not to have read it. The kid then shows him a letter from Rutte to Klaus Schwab, where Rutte thanks him for the copy of the book that Klaus sent him and calls it a hopeful analysis for the future. The Great Reset agenda, a hopeful analysis for the future. And if he wasn't good buddies with Klaus Schwab, why is Klaus Schwab just sending him a free copy of the book? Come on. Who are you trying to kid? So the bottom line is this guy who's a proxy for the World Economic Forum, a proxy for Klaus Schwab himself, a mouthpiece, really, is now in charge of an entity that could take us into World War III. And what's even more disturbing is when you look at this through the lens of what the priorities are for these global elite. So now let me switch up the screen share. And let's go right over to this clip that I'm referring to, because nothing articulates their position better than this clip. No, wrong screen share. There we go. All right, Josh, can you see that?
Yes.
Okay, here we go. And listen, I might even stop this a couple times because you got to listen to what Thanos's character says. Very, very important here.
Your home?
It was. And it was beautiful. Titan was like most planets. Too many mouths, not enough to go around.
Too many mouths and not enough to go around, he said.
And when we faced extinction, I offered a solution.
Genocide.
But random, dispassionate, fair to rich and poor alike. They called me a madman. And what I predicted came to pass.
Congratulations, you're a prophet
I'm a survivor.
who wants to murder trillions.
With all 6 stones, I could simply snap my fingers. They would all cease to exist. I call that mercy.
Mercy. I call that mercy, he says. And this sounds extreme. But if you think about the Malthusian view, that's a perfect elevator, or that's a perfect Reader's Digest version of it. That's a perfect summary right there. There's too many mouths to feed and not enough to go around. And therefore, we've got to make some hard choices. We've got to get rid of 4 billion people. We wish we didn't have to do that, but we have no other choice. It's the only way that we can save the planet. It's the only way that we can save the human race. So we are the ones, the Mark Ruttés of the world are the ones that have the huevos to do what it takes to create genocide, to depopulate the earth, to actually save the earth, and to show the human race mercy. At the end of the day, that's what this is all about. And that's the guy that's now in charge of NATO. So on that bombshell, try to enjoy the rest of your afternoon. As always, make sure that you're standing up for freedom, liberty, free market capitalism. And I want to actually end on a positive note, because we can sit here and look at these things and say, oh my gosh, this is terrible. It feels like all the cards are stacked against us. But at the end of the day, we are the ones that have the power to shape the future. We are the ones that are in control of our own destiny. And you say, George, well, no, how is that? I mean, they have all the military. They have the central bank. They have the money. They have all of the political power. Right. But you've got to remember, there are a lot more of us than there is of them. And at the end of the day, if only 10% of us come together, they will have absolutely no power whatsoever. So that's what we have to do. We have to leverage the power of the people. We'll see you in the next video.